Chapter 13, Young Master's Gorgeous Servant. Nicole moaned in anguish and threw the ancient notes onto the table. She had not expected this to happen. She thought she had found a solution to an intractable problem. It was obviously not the case. That little bastard Seth, although he wasn't much, he was still the future heir to the Tulip family. The bearer of the family name. More importantly, Seth still had 6 months before he graduates from the Imperial Academy. He must graduate. He must pass the examination so that His Majesty the Emperor can confer the position of heir to the Tulip family to become the next generation Tulip family duke. However, as of this moment, he had run away. Although he had always been queer in his ways, his actions this time was really outrageous. That guy actually boarded a ship and headed out to the ocean. Even if they moved out now, even if they were faster, they would not be able to find Seth. But what about us here? What about the Imperial Academy? What about graduation? Don't graduate. What a joke. One of the identities of the Tulip family was that in these past hundreds of years in the Empire, there was not a single successor to the Tulip family that did not graduate from the Imperial Academy. Their family had always been the pride of the Empire. If this generation's family member ran away and did not take the examination, and did not inherit the title of Duke from His Majesty, it would not only be extremely shameful, it would also be a disaster for the family. Seth would lose the qualifications to inherit the title and the Tulip family would lose the status of a dukedom. It was extremely frightening. In Nicole's desperation, she came up with this fraud. It just so happened that this boy broke into her home and, in a way, it was also his fault that Seth managed to escape also. He seemed quite suitable. From his behavior, he was a decent young man. Although he made a mistake, his character was still acceptable. His swordsmanship was also decent. In actual fact, this was just Nicole reassuring herself. Rody was not particularly good, but he still managed to obtain excellent results. On the other hand, Seth could only be referred to as useless. Moreover, Rody was a commoner and an unimportant person. He could be easily controlled. He was a little bigger and a little stronger than Seth. She planned to keep Seth out of sight for 3 months. In this 3 months, people's memory of Seth's physique would not be as clear as it used to be, and she could also try and make Rody lose weight. 3 months later, Rody would be able to take the examination while pretending to be Seth using God's smile. After 3 months of training, Rody should be able to pass the examination. Even Master Autumn acknowledged his potential. Anyway, even if Rody was not very strong, he would at least be stronger than Seth, right? Once Rody passed the examination and graduate, he would obtain the Emperor's official recognition and inherit the title of a duke. That way, he could help the Tulip family get out of this crisis, although that was a bit unfair to Rody, who asked him to attack the carriage. To even intrude into her home at night and even do that thing. It was his own fault to participate in crime. After the situation is resolved, maybe she could use her connections to get him into the Imperial Army. That would give him a much better future. It would be an easier life than staying at the Imperial Academy, graduating and having a mediocre life thereafter in the Imperial Army. A warrior could be easily promoted if they had outstanding military achievements, but those ears. Nicole almost tore up all the ancient notes in front of her in anger. However, she resisted her anger, held up the notes and slowly read it again word by word. If only she could understand those words written by the great sage Dandong. Perhaps the great sage Dandong had some other notes about this God's smile. Great sage Dandong, who had stayed in here in his old age, must have studied it thoroughly. Actually, he had studied such stuff his entire life. Rody, who was under Nicole's sleeping spell, only woke up 12 hours later. The first thing he did when he woke up was to touch his ears. When he touched his long and pointed ears, his heart was filled with despair. However, he was not willing to give up. He picked up the mirror that was left on the bed beside him and looked at his own face. $. Rody could not help but shout out a string of curses. Then he groaned and tossed the mirror back onto the bed. What should I do now? Although his original face had a large birthmark, making it a yin-yang face, it was not as terrible as his current appearance. A person may have large birthmarks. It was a normal thing. Although Rody was ridiculed for his ugly appearance, only the noble students did it. The poor commoner students did not, because the birthmark was natural. It was given to him by his parents. It was fate. He himself had no say in it. Although it was ugly, it was still the face of a person. This time, that would not be the case any longer. Having a large birthmark was still human, but who in the world had such long rabbit ears? Originally, he was a little ugly, but at least he was still human. Now, he would probably be classified as a monster. Rody sighed for a moment and stood up from the bed. There was nobody in the room, so Rody decided to look around. Based on the layout of the room, it was obvious that this bedroom belonged to a master of the house. The design and decoration seemed very tasteful. Even the intricate carvings of the large bed he slept on seemed extremely exquisite. On the table were two vases. It was evident that they were works of art and worth a lot of money. There was also an oil painting. Although Rody did not have any art sense, he could tell with a glance that it was not some cheap stuff from the market. Where is this? Rody asked himself. He then thought to himself, could it be that I slept in Miss Nicole's room? But then he immediately, with certainty, shot down that attractive idea. Impossible. He still had his common sense with him. However, this room was not like a servant's room or a guest room. Could it be? Rody frowned. At this time, someone knocked on the door. Rody was shocked and quickly rushed into bed. He picked up the clothes on the bed by instinct and wrapped his head. He was now already a monster and did not want anyone else to see his long ears. The large wooden hemlock door was gently opened. A graceful figure came in. Although she was holding a silver pot, her pace was still very graceful. She looked inside and seeing Rody, head wrapped with clothes, she smiled. There was a strange gaze in her eyes, but it soon vanished. Although this girl was in a maid's clothing, it could not conceal her innate beauty and radiance. Her soft blue hair was like the gentle waves of the ocean. She also had a pretty face that made people want to shower her with affection, especially her beautiful eyes. Just a glance of her eyes was mesmerizing. Honestly, Rody was already gaping and his heart was saying, goodness gracious. The high-class families are really different. Even their servants are so beautiful. The servant girl felt Rody staring at her and blushed. She then put the silver pot down and said, young master, what evil plans are you thinking of now? Young master? Rody's eyes opened wide. The girl acted like she made a mistake and stuck out her tongue and blushingly said, I still do not dare to call you Seth. I will still call you young master, Seth. Rody's eyes were still wide. Enough. The young girl blushed as she stamped her feet in a bit of anger. I came to wash your face, but you are bullying me. I will leave. The girl's face became a little solemn. Seeing that Rody did not speak further, the young girl walked around him and said, young master, you are being mischievous again. You always like to do strange things. Why did you wrap your head with clothes? Is it perhaps a kind of art? Saying that, she stretched out her hand to take away the clothes on Rody's head. Ah! Rody screamed and leaned back.